The autumn sun cast long shadows across the Chicago skyline as Ethan Miller stood at the edge of the steel beam 50 stories above the city streets. The wind whipped around him, fluttering the worn edges of the envelope in his calloused hands. Final notice, the red letters declared, leaving no room for interpretation. $5,000 in 30 days, or the bank would take everything. He squinted against the harsh light, the weight of the paper somehow heavier than the steel beams he'd been hauling all morning. Below him, the city continued its relentless pace, oblivious to one man's struggle against the crushing tide of debt and responsibility. Ethan folded the notice carefully, slipping it into his jacket pocket before retrieving his wallet. Behind the plastic window, 7-year-old Lily smiled back at him, her front tooth missing her eyes, his eyes crinkling with pure joy. His throat tightened. 2 years without Sarah, and still her smile shined through their daughter. The photograph had been taken on Lily's first day of school last year, before the hospital bills had piled up, before the overtime hours had stretched into endless weeks of exhaustion, before everything had started to crumble. "I won't let you down, baby girl. You won't end up on the streets. Not while I'm breathing." The heavy footsteps of steel-toed boots approached from behind. Tom Jenkins, 62 years of weathered experience in his face and hands, clapped Ethan on the shoulder. The old man's eyes narrowed with concern. "Boss is looking for you, kid, and he ain't wearing his happy face." Ethan tucked the wallet away, the moment of vulnerability sealed behind the mask of stoicism he'd perfected since Sarah's passing. The world didn't stop for grief, and it certainly didn't pause for financial ruin. He'd learned that the hard way. The distant sound of helicopter blades cut through the city noise, the rhythmic thump, 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 drawing closer. Ethan glanced up, momentarily distracted by 3 sleek black helicopters approaching the south side of the city. Strange, he thought. Nobody with that kind of money ever headed to his neighborhood. Little did he know, in 48 hours, those same helicopters would land just blocks from his apartment door, bringing with them a woman whose life he would save, and who would save his in return. The cramped 2-bedroom apartment Ethan called home sat on the 3rd floor of a weathered brick building in South Chicago. The rent was cheap by city standards, which meant only slightly unaffordable instead of impossible. The walls were thin enough that the Rodriguez family's telenovelas provided nightly entertainment, and the pipes groaned like wounded animals whenever anyone ran hot water. But it was clean, Ethan made sure of that, and it was theirs at least until the eviction notice became reality. Morning light filtered through faded curtains as Ethan stood at the small kitchen counter, meticulously cutting a peanut butter sandwich into the shape of a heart. The precision he used was the same he applied to his work on the construction site: careful, deliberate, nothing wasted. The knife, like most things in the apartment, had seen better days. The handle was wrapped in duct tape where the plastic had cracked, but the blade was sharp, maintained with the same care he gave to all his tools. Lily sat at the table, small legs swinging beneath her chair, as she worked through a math worksheet. Her dark hair fell across her face, and she pushed it back with a practiced gesture that mirrored her mother's so perfectly it sometimes stole Ethan's breath. She wore her favorite blue sweater, the one they'd found at the thrift store that still had the original price tag. A treasure, she'd called it, not understanding that most children got their clothes new. Ethan had never corrected her. Let her find joy in the small things. The world would teach her about want soon enough. Ethan placed the heart-shaped sandwich on a plate and set it before her. She looked up, her smile momentarily hiding the shadows of fatigue that shouldn't belong on a child's face. Lily had inherited more than just Sarah's smile. The asthma that had plagued her mother had found its way to their daughter as well. Look at that smile, just like her mother's. The thought warmed and wounded in equal measure. She picked up half the sandwich, studying his handiwork. "You're getting better at this, Daddy. This one actually looks like a heart and not a potato." That laugh, God, he needed to hear that more often. He ruffled her hair and checked his watch, a practical battered timepiece that had belonged to his father. "Finish up, Lil. We can't be late again." The kitchen counter behind them was a testament to their circumstances. Bottles of prescription medication lined up like soldiers, each one a financial battle. The inhaler Lily needed cost nearly $100 with their bare-bones insurance. The maintenance medication was 3 times that. Each month, Ethan performed financial gymnastics, juggling which bills could wait, which creditors would be the most understanding, which necessities could be stretched a little further. The refrigerator hummed loudly, the sound a reminder that the appliance was fighting a losing battle against time. Inside, the shelves held the basics: milk, eggs, vegetables that were on sale, nothing extravagant. Ethan ate less than he should, making sure Lily never noticed the disparity between their plates. Children were observant, but they could be distracted. He'd become an expert at moving food around his plate while telling stories about his day, ensuring her attention was on his words and not his untouched dinner. Lily finished her breakfast and gathered her schoolwork, carefully placing each sheet into a plastic folder. The folder had been new at the beginning of the school year, a small luxury Ethan had insisted upon. She deserved at least that much. Before heading out the door, she threw her arms around his waist, her head barely reaching his chest. The gesture was spontaneous and fierce, filled with a love so pure it made his chest ache. "I'll fix this. Somehow I have to." The walk to Lily's school took 15 minutes, cutting through neighborhoods that transformed block by block. They passed boarded-up storefronts and newly gentrified coffee shops in equal measure, the disparity of Chicago's South Side on full display. Ethan kept Lily's hand firmly in his eyes, constantly scanning their surroundings. Habit born from necessity. Along the route, they passed Joe's Auto Shop, where Ethan had worked for nearly a decade before it closed down last year. He'd been the head mechanic known throughout the neighborhood for his ability to diagnose engine problems by sound alone. The shop windows were still papered over, the sign faded, but visible, a ghost of better times. Ethan avoided looking directly at it, but Lily's eyes lingered. She tugged at his hand. "Do you think they'll ever open it again?" The innocent question carried more weight than she knew. That shop had been security, a career with benefits and regular hours. When it closed, Ethan had lost more than a paycheck, he'd lost a future. Life doesn't always go how we plan, sweetheart. Sometimes you've just got to roll with the punches. In the years since Joe's had closed, Ethan had pieced together what work he could find. His mechanical skills transferring only partially to construction. The pay was worse, the hours longer, the security non-existent, but it put food on the table most days. They stopped at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Across the street, a shiny BMW slowed to turn, the driver talking animatedly on a cell phone, a coffee cup balanced precariously in one hand. Ethan watched with the critical eye of someone who understood machines better than people. The driver was distracted, the car probably overdue for maintenance given the slight hesitation in the engine's purr. 2 more blocks brought them to the gates of Lily's school, Winston Elementary, a modest public school with chain-link fences and a recently repainted playground. It wasn't the school Ethan would have chosen if circumstances were different. Sarah had talked about private schools, about educational opportunities that now seemed as distant as the stars. But the teachers cared, and Lily was learning, and for now, that had to be enough. Mrs. Chen, Lily's second-grade teacher, stood at the entrance, greeting children with a warm smile. When she spotted Lily, her expression brightened, then shifted subtly when her eyes met Ethan's. It was a look he'd grown accustomed to, compassion mixed with concern. The teachers knew about Sarah. They knew about Lily's asthma. They probably suspected the financial struggles too. Lily hugged him once more before running to join her friends. He watched her go, the blue sweater, a splash of color against the gray concrete of the schoolyard. She looked back once, waving, and then was absorbed into the stream of children. Mrs. Chen approached, her voice low. "Mr. Miller, do you have a moment?" The formal arm address sent a curl of unease through his stomach. Adults only used last names when something was wrong. Her eyes were kind but serious. "Lily had a bit of trouble breathing during recess yesterday. Nothing severe enough to call you, but I wanted you to be aware." A familiar fear gripped his chest. Did she use her inhaler? Yes, and she recovered quickly. But the school nurse mentioned her prescription is nearly due for renewal. The prescription? Of course, another $200 he didn't have. "I'll take care of it today. Thank you for letting me know." Mrs. Chen hesitated, then added, "The school has resources for families who need assistance. Medical funds, payment programs." Ethan straightened his pride, a fragile but persistent thing. "We're managing just fine, but I appreciate your concern." The walk to the bus stop felt longer than usual, each step heavier with the added weight of worry. The construction site was on the other side of the city, a 45-minute commute on good days. Today the bus was late, and Ethan checked his watch repeatedly, calculating minutes lost, imagining Frank's disapproving scowl. His phone vibrated, an ancient flip phone that had survived 3 drops into engine oil and countless construction site accidents. The screen displayed the school's number, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his system. "Mr. Miller, this is Nurse Patel from Winston Elementary. Lily's having some difficulty breathing. She's stable, but I think you should come." The world narrowed to a pinpoint of focus. "I'll be right there." Turning on his heel, Ethan broke into a run, retracing his steps toward the school. His mind raced faster than his feet. Should he call an ambulance? No, they couldn't afford another emergency room visit. Was it bad enough to warrant one anyway? Fear clutched at his throat, memories of Sarah's final hospitalization flashing unbidden. She had struggled to breathe then, too. Arriving back at the school breathless, Ethan found Lily sitting on a cot in the nurse's office, her inhaler clutched in her small hand. Her breathing was labored, but not the terrifying gasping he'd feared. Relief and concern battled for dominance as he knelt beside her. Nurse Patel's expression was reassuring. She's doing much better now. The attack was mild, but I thought you should know. Lily's eyes found his embarrassment mingling with relief. I'm okay, Daddy. I just got scared when it started. His hand smoothed her hair back from her forehead. You did the right thing telling the nurse. That's my brave girl. It took 30 minutes to get Lily settled and breathing normally again. 30 minutes of work missed. 30 minutes Frank Donovan would add to his mental tally of Ethan's absences. But what choice did he have? After ensuring Lily was truly okay to return to class, Ethan made his way to the bus stop, once more pulling out his phone to make the call he dreaded. Frank answered on the second ring, his voice gruff and impatient. You better be calling from your deathbed, Miller. Ethan closed his eyes, swallowing his frustration. It's Lily. She had an asthma attack at school. I'm on my way in now. The silence lasted just long enough to turn Ethan's stomach. This is the third time this month, Miller. She's 7 years old with chronic asthma, Frank. What am I supposed to do? Another pause, heavier this time. I've got inspectors coming today. The big bosses from Harrington Enterprises. I need everyone on point. I'll be there. I'm getting on the bus now. Frank's voice hardened. This is the last time, Miller. I mean it. One more incident and you're done. The line went dead, leaving Ethan staring at the phone, a dull roar in his ears that had nothing to do with the approaching bus. One more incident, one more emergency, one more reminder that he was failing at the impossible task of being both provider and caregiver. The construction site loomed ahead, Chicago Heights, rising 50 stories into the clear autumn sky. The gleaming steel and glass structure would eventually house luxury condominiums, high-end retail shops, and offices for the city's elite. For now, it was a skeleton of potential crawling with workers in hard hats and reflective vests. Ethan clocked in 27 minutes late, each minute a strike against him in Frank's mental record. He changed quickly in the makeshift locker room, donning his hard hat and safety gear with practiced efficiency. 10 years as a mechanic had given him a respect for safety protocols that many of the younger guys lacked. Cars and construction sites were both unforgiving to the careless. Tom Jenkins spotted him from across the site, raising a hand in greeting before making his way over. The older man moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had seen too many workplace accidents, his left leg bearing the remnants of a steel beam collapse from 15 years prior. Tom's weathered face creased with concern. Frank's on the warpath. Harrington herself is supposed to show up today. Ethan secured his tool belt. Victoria Harrington, the CEO. The very same. Word is she's not happy about some safety report. Frank's been chewing nails all morning. Safety report. The phrase triggered a memory from last week. Ethan had pointed out improper bracing on the 32nd floor, only to have his concerns dismissed as overly cautious. He documented it anyway, following protocols, even as Frank had rolled his eyes. Across the site, Frank Donovan emerged from the site office, his substantial frame moving with surprising agility for a man of 58. His perpetual scowl deepened when he spotted Ethan, and he altered his course, heading straight for them. Tom muttered under his breath, "Brace yourself, kid." Frank reached them, safety clipboard clutched like a weapon. His face was flushed, whether from the morning chill or anger was hard to tell. Probably both. "Nice of you to join us, Miller. While you were taking your sweet time, we've had OSHA sniffing around and Harrington's team doing their own inspection." Ethan straightened, matching Frank's intensity. "Lily had an asthma attack. I got here as soon as—" Frank's hand cut through the air, silencing him. "I don't want excuses. I need you on the 35th floor finishing the electrical conduit installation, and it needs to be done by noon." Electrical wasn't even Ethan's specialty. "That's Rodriguez's assignment. I'm supposed to be on structural today. Rodriguez called in sick. You're what I've got. Unless you'd prefer I find someone more reliable." The threat hung in the air between them. Behind Frank, Tom's expression conveyed what words couldn't take the assignment. "Keep your head down, survive another day." Ethan nodded curtly. "I'll get it done." Frank leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Not one mistake, Miller. Not today. Harrington is looking for any excuse to delay this project, and I'm not going to give her one. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Like the choice between pride and a paycheck. Like the decision between standing your ground and keeping your child fed. The 35th floor was a maze of partially completed walls, exposed beams, and the constant cacophony of construction. Ethan worked methodically, checking and double-checking each connection, each measurement. Electrical wasn't his strongest area, but he'd picked up enough over the past year to manage. The task required focus, precision, and time, the last of which he didn't have nearly enough. By 11:30, sweat soaked through his shirt, despite the October chill. He'd skipped breaks, working straight through to meet Frank's impossible deadline. His back ached from contorting into awkward spaces, his hands cramped from the delicate work of running conduit through tight openings. Tom appeared with a thermos of coffee, offering it without comment. Ethan accepted gratefully, the hot liquid burning all the way down. The older man surveyed the work with an approving nod. Not bad for a guy who's supposed to be on structural. Ethan wiped his brow with his sleeve. Is she here yet, Harrington? Arrived about 20 minutes ago, entourage and all. They're starting on the lower floors. Something in Tom's tone made Ethan look up. What aren't you telling me? Tom sighed, his expression grave. She's brought the big guns. Lawyers, safety experts, engineers. This isn't a casual visit, kid. Word around the site is she's looking to make an example. Harrington Enterprises had a reputation for ruthless efficiency in business dealings, but also for uncompromising standards when it came to worker safety. Victoria Harrington had transformed her late husband's modest construction company into a real estate empire over the past decade, her methods both admired and feared throughout the industry. Ethan handed the thermos back. I've got nothing to hide. My work's solid. Tom's eyes crinkled at the corners. It's not about your work, son. It's about politics. Big money. The kind of game where guys like us are just pawns. Returning to his task, Ethan pushed Tom's words from his mind. Politics and corporate games didn't put food on the table. Completing this job on time did. At precisely 11:58, Ethan secured the last electrical connection, performing a final check before gathering his tools. He'd made it barely. Frank's deadline met despite the morning's delay. Maybe that would buy him a reprieve from the constant scrutiny, at least for today. The radio at his belt crackled to life. Miller, report to the site office, now. Frank's voice carried even through the static, the tension unmistakable. Ethan exchanged a glance with Tom, who shrugged helplessly. Sometimes you do everything right and life kicks you anyway. That's just how it goes. The construction elevator was packed with workers heading down for lunch. The enclosed space filled with the sense of sweat dust and the various lunches carried in battered coolers. Conversation flowed around Ethan, but he remained apart, his thoughts circling like vultures. What did Frank want? Had he found some flaw in the morning's work? Or was this about Lily, about the repeated absences and late arrivals? The site office was a double-wide trailer parked at the edge of the construction zone, its white exterior long since turned gray from constant dust. Inside, air conditioning battled unsuccessfully against the heat generated by too many bodies in too small a space. Frank stood near his cluttered desk, his expression unreadable as Ethan entered. Behind him, a wall of safety certifications and project timelines covered nearly every available inch, a testament to Frank's 25 years in construction management. For all his faults, and they were numerous, no one could say Frank Donovan didn't know his business. Frank didn't look up from the papers in his hand. The electrical work on 35. You finished it. Yes, just now. Everything's up to code, double-checked. Good. Frank finally raised his eyes, the usual hostility tempered with something else, resignation perhaps. There's a problem with your paperwork. The HR department says your safety certification for electrical work expired last month. Ethan's stomach dropped. That's impossible. I renewed everything in August. Frank pushed a form across the desk. Not according to this. You're 3 weeks overdue. The paper blurred before Ethan's eyes. He'd submitted the renewal forms, paid the fee with money he couldn't spare. Had it gotten lost in processing? Or had he miscalculated, letting the date slip past in the chaos of Lily's back-to-school expenses? Frank continued, his voice flat. Ordinarily, I just send you to recertification. But with Harrington here conducting a full safety audit, he let the implication hang. Frank, I can't, Ethan swallowed hard. I need this job, and I need workers who keep their certifications current, especially today. Frank rubbed a hand over his face, suddenly looking older than his years. I'm suspending you without pay until you get recertified. 2 days max if you get it done immediately. Suspension. No pay. 2 days minimum. The calculations raced through Ethan's mind. $200 lost at least. $200 he desperately needed for Lily's prescription for rent, for the electricity bill that was already overdue. Before Ethan could respond, the office door swung open, admitting a blast of cold air and the distinct sound of expensive heels on metal steps. Both men turned to find a woman framed in the doorway, her presence commanding attention without effort. Victoria Harrington stood 5'8" in heels that added another 3 inches to her height. Her charcoal gray suit was impeccably tailored, her dark hair pulled back in a severe style that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. At 45, she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. Behind her, a small entourage waited: a young woman with a tablet, a middle-aged man in an equally expensive suit, and 2 men who had the unmistakable bearing of security personnel. Victoria's eyes swept the office, cataloging and assessing in a single glance. "Mr. Donovan, I was told I might find you here. We need to discuss the safety violations my team has documented on the lower levels." Frank's expression shifted instantly from reluctant disciplinarian to deferential manager. "Ms. Harrington, of course. We were just wrapping up a personnel matter." Her gaze shifted to Ethan, cool and evaluating. "I don't believe we've met." Frank jumped in before Ethan could respond. "This is Miller, one of our general laborers. He was just leaving." The dismissal stung, but Ethan knew his place in the hierarchy. He nodded respectfully to Victoria and moved toward the door, his mind already racing ahead to how he would afford the recertification fee on top of everything else. As he stepped outside, he heard Victoria's voice, crisp and authoritative. "I've identified 17 safety violations in the first 10 floors alone, Mr. Donovan. Care to explain how this happened under your supervision?" The door closed behind him, cutting off Frank's response. In the construction yard, workers gathered in small groups, eating lunch and speculating about the visit from corporate. Ethan avoided them, making his way to the far edge of the site where Tom sat alone on a stack of lumber, sandwich in hand. The older man made room for him. "That bad, huh?" Ethan dropped beside him, the fight temporarily drained from his body. "My electrical certification lapsed. Frank suspended me until I can renew it." Tom winced. "That's rough timing. I can't afford 2 days without pay, Tom. I just can't." "What about that emergency fund you mentioned, the one Sarah's parents set up for Lily?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Already emptied it. Last winter when Lily was hospitalized for pneumonia." Tom offered half his sandwich, which Ethan declined with a shake of his head. The older man didn't push understanding pride when he saw it. They sat in companionable silence, watching as Victoria Harrington emerged from the site office, her entourage falling in step behind her. Even from a distance, her displeasure was evident in the set of her shoulders, the clipped pace of her stride. Tom nudged Ethan. $10 says Frank's getting reamed out in there." Despite everything, Ethan found himself smiling slightly. "No bet. Frank knew about those safety issues. We all did." Victoria and her team made their way toward a sleek black SUV parked at the edge of the construction zone. The security detail moved with practiced efficiency, one opening the vehicle's door, while the other scanned the surroundings. Victoria paused to speak with the man in the expensive suit, her expression intent as she pointed toward the upper levels of the building. Ethan's phone vibrated in his pocket. Expecting it to be the certification agency returning his earlier inquiry, he was surprised to see the school's number again. Cold dread washed through him as he answered. "Mr. Miller, it's Mrs. Chen. Lily's having another episode worse than this morning. The nurse has given her the inhaler, but it doesn't seem to be helping as much as it should. We're considering calling an ambulance." The world narrowed to a pinpoint of focus, every other concern instantly relegated to background noise. "Don't call an ambulance. I'll be right there. 20 minutes tops." Tom was already on his feet, concern etched into the lines of his face. "Lily." Ethan nodded, pocketing his phone. "I have to go. If Frank asks, I'll handle Frank. Go take care of your girl." Gratitude wasn't enough, but it was all Ethan had to offer. With a quick clasp of Tom's shoulder, he hurried toward the site exit, not bothering to change out of his work clothes. The bus would take too long. He'd have to splurge on a cab, another expense he couldn't afford, but time was more precious than money when it came to Lily's breathing. As he jogged toward the main road, a commotion near the construction entrance caught his attention. A delivery truck was backing into the unloading zone, its reverse alarm blaring. The driver was focusing on his side mirrors, unaware that Victoria Harrington's SUV had pulled up directly behind him, temporarily stopped, while her security detail discussed something with the site guard. Ethan's trained eye immediately registered the danger. The truck was moving too fast for a construction zone, the driver inexperienced or careless. And Victoria's SUV was perfectly positioned in the blind spot. Without conscious thought, Ethan changed direction, sprinting toward the impending collision. He shouted a warning, but the truck's engine and alarm drowned out his voice. The security guards were turned away, engaged with the sight guard. The man in the expensive suit was on his phone. Only Victoria herself noticed Ethan's approach, her expression changing from surprise to alarm as she followed his gaze to the rapidly approaching truck. Time compressed, adrenaline stretching seconds into minutes. Ethan reached the SUV just as the truck's rear bumper made contact with the front grille. The impact wasn't violent, the truck had nearly stopped, but it was enough to push the SUV backwards several feet, trapping Victoria between the vehicle and a stack of steel piping. Victoria's cry of pain cut through the cacophony of construction noise. Ethan vaulted over the SUV's hood, landing beside her just as the security team finally registered what was happening. Victoria was pinned at the waist, the pressure not immediately life-threatening, but potentially serious if the vehicle shifted. The truck driver, finally aware of the accident, slammed on his brakes and jumped from the cab, his face pale with shock. "Oh God, I didn't see, I was looking at the other mirror." Ethan ignored him, focusing entirely on Victoria. Her face was tight with pain, but her eyes were clear and focused. "Don't move. We need to get these vehicles stabilized before we try to free you." To her credit, she didn't panic or demand immediate action. She nodded once, her breathing controlled despite the obvious discomfort. "The pressure isn't crushing, just holding me in place." The security team reached them, one immediately pulling his weapon and training it on the truck driver, who raised his hands in terrified surrender. The other began shouting into a radio, calling for emergency services. Ethan's mind raced through the problem, mechanical experience translating to this new crisis. "We need to secure the truck first. If it rolls even an inch more, the pressure could increase." He turned to the nearest security guard. "Do you have wheel chocks in your vehicle, something to block the truck's tires?" The guard shook his head, but Victoria's assistant stepped forward, her composure admirable under pressure. "There are emergency supplies in the back of our vehicle, including wheel chocks." Ethan directed the operation with calm efficiency, instructing the guards on securing the truck while he assessed Victoria's situation more thoroughly. The space between the SUV and the steel piping was narrow, compressing her abdomen and hips, but not her chest or legs. A few inches of movement would free her, but those inches had to come from the SUV, not the truck behind it. The site guard had arrived with a first aid kit, and Frank Donovan was racing across the yard, face flushed with exertion and panic. In the distance, sirens wailed, emergency services responding to the call. Victoria's gaze never left Ethan's face, her expression a mixture of pain and calculation. "You're not waiting for the paramedics. You have a plan." It wasn't a question, but Ethan nodded anyway. "We need to move the SUV forward just enough to create space. But we can't start the engine, the vibration might cause the truck to shift." "Manual labor then." Her voice remained steady despite the circumstances. "What do you need?" "4 strong backs and something to use as a lever." Within minutes, Ethan had organized an impromptu rescue team himself, the 2 security guards, Frank and Tom, who had appeared without being called, as reliable as sunrise. Using a length of steel pipe as a lever and strategic muscle, they created just enough space for Victoria to slip free. The moment she was clear, Ethan and Tom helped her to a safe distance, while the others secured both vehicles more permanently. Victoria's suit was ruined, dust and grease marking where the vehicles had pressed against her. A red welt was visible on her hand where she'd braced against the metal piping, and she moved gingerly but appeared otherwise unharmed. The paramedics arrived as Victoria was seated on an overturned bucket, her assistant hovering nearby with a bottle of water and a first aid kit. Ethan stepped back, letting the professionals take over. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the real emergency waiting across town. "Lily, I need to get to Lily." He turned to leave his duty here fulfilled when Victoria's voice stopped him. "You construction worker. What's your name?" Ethan paused, turning back. "Ethan Miller, ma'am." "You're leaving." Her tone made it clear she found this surprising. "My daughter's having an asthma attack at school. I need to get to her." Victoria's expression shifted subtly, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. She gestured to her assistant. "Jessica, have Michael drive Mr. Miller wherever he needs to go, immediately." The young woman nodded, already on her phone, relaying the instruction. Victoria continued, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone used to being obeyed. "And I want his contact information. We're not finished here. Under normal circumstances, Ethan might have refused the offer out of pride. But Lily needed him, and a chauffeur-driven SUV would get him there far faster than public transportation. He nodded his thanks to Victoria, who was already being led toward a second vehicle that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. As Ethan followed Jessica toward yet another black SUV, Frank Donovan intercepted him, face-mottled with conflicting emotions. "Where the hell do you think you're going? First you abandon your post to play hero. Now you're just walking off-site." Ethan's patience, already stretched thin, snapped. "My daughter is having a severe asthma attack. I told you this morning her condition was unstable. And I told you this was your last chance." Frank's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby workers. "You left the 35th floor unattended with live electrical work in progress. That's a major safety violation. I finished the job before I left. Everything's secured." Frank's eyes narrowed. "You were suspended, Miller. You shouldn't have been on site at all when this happened. As far as I'm concerned, you interfered with a situation that wasn't your responsibility." The absurdity of the accusation struck Ethan like a physical blow. "Interfered? I just prevented your biggest client from being seriously injured on your site. And how do you think this looks to Harrington Enterprises, one of my workers, who shouldn't even be here, having to rescue their CEO because our safety protocols failed?" Frank stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're fired, Miller. Clean out your locker and don't come back." The words hit with the force of a sledgehammer, but Ethan didn't have time to process them. Not now. Not with Lily waiting. Tom appeared at his side, a solid presence in the shifting ground of the moment. "Go, kid. I'll get your things. Your girl needs you." With a nod of gratitude to Tom and a last disbelieving glance at Frank, Ethan turned away, following Jessica to the waiting SUV. The driver, a professionally neutral man in a black suit, opened the door without comment. As the vehicle pulled away from the construction site, Ethan's mind reeled with the implications of what had just happened. Fired, no room, no income, no health insurance for Lily. All because he'd done the right thing twice in one day. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. Save a woman's life, lose your livelihood. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. The SUV navigated Chicago traffic with surprising efficiency, the driver seemingly aware of shortcuts and patterns that shaved precious minutes off the journey. Ethan sat rigid in the luxurious back seat, every fiber of his being focused on reaching Lily as quickly as possible. Through the tinted windows, the city blurred past gleaming financial district, giving way to modest residential areas, then to the familiar worn landscape of his neighborhood. The contrast between the vehicle he sat in and the surroundings it traversed wasn't lost on him. Two worlds briefly and uncomfortably intersecting. Winston Elementary came into view, its brick facade and chain-link fence, a welcome sight despite the circumstances. The SUV pulled to a smooth stop at the curb, and Ethan was out before the driver could open his door. The school office was quiet, the secretary looking up in surprise as Ethan burst in, still in his dust-covered work clothes and safety boots. She recovered quickly. "Mr. Miller, Lily's in the nurse's office. They've stabilized her breathing, but the nurse wants her to see a doctor today." Relief and renewed anxiety warred within him as he made his way down the familiar hallway. Stabilized was good. Doctor was bad, at least financially. The nurse's office was small but meticulously organized, the scent of antiseptic hanging in the air. Lily sat on the edge of a cot, her small frame dwarfed by the oxygen tank beside her. A clear mask covered her nose and mouth, fogging slightly with each breath. When she saw him, her eyes crinkled in a smile the mask couldn't hide. Nurse Patel looked up from her desk, her expression professionally calm but with underlying concern. "Mr. Miller, good you're here. Lily's breathing has improved with the supplemental oxygen, but her peak flow readings are still lower than I'd like to see." Ethan knelt before his daughter, taking her small hands in his. "Hey, Lil, rough day, huh?" She nodded, eyes too old in her young face. "Sorry, Daddy. I tried to be brave." "You are brave. The bravest person I know." He squeezed her hands gently, then turned to the nurse. "What are we looking at here?" Nurse Patel's expression was sympathetic but direct. "She needs to see her pulmonologist. The rescue inhaler isn't providing sufficient relief, which suggests her maintenance medication may need adjustment. I've already called Dr. Patterson's office. They can see her at 3 o'clock, if you can get her there." 3 o'clock. 2 hours from now. Enough time to get Lily home changed into the doctor's office across town, but not enough time to figure out how he would pay for the visit without insurance. The suspension, no firing, had changed everything. But Lily came first. Always. "We'll be there. Thank you for taking care of her." Outside in the hallway, Mrs. Chen waited, concern evident in her expression. Mr. Miller, is there anything the school can do to help? The principal mentioned we might be able to access the emergency medical fund for families in need. Pride warred with practicality in Ethan's chest. He'd never taken charity, had worked since he was 16 to support himself and later his family. But this wasn't about him, it was about Lily. Before he could respond, a commotion at the school entrance drew their attention. The sleek black SUV was still parked at the curb, but now it was joined by another identical vehicle. A woman in a suit, Jessica Victoria Harrington's assistant, was speaking with the school security guard, gesturing toward the building. Mrs. Chen frowned. Is that person with you, Mr. Miller? Sort of. It's complicated. Ethan hesitated, then made a decision. Could you stay with Lily for a moment? I need to speak with them. Outside, Jessica looked relieved to spot him. Mr. Miller, Ms. Harrington asked me to ensure you and your daughter have everything you need. We've arranged for a pediatric pulmonologist to meet you at Northwestern Memorial in 30 minutes, and all expenses will be covered by Harrington Enterprises. The offer was so unexpected, so beyond anything Ethan could have anticipated, that for a moment he couldn't find words. Jessica continued, unfazed by his silence. Ms. Harrington was quite insistent. She feels responsible for taking you away from your daughter this morning, and she wants to make it right. The specialist is the best in Chicago, and there won't be any waiting. Pride and necessity battled briefly before necessity won. Thank you. Please tell Ms. Harrington I'm grateful. Jessica smiled, her professional demeanor softening slightly. She'd like to thank you personally once your daughter is taken care of. Here's my card. Please call when you're ready. Back inside, Ethan explained the situation to Nurse Patel, who looked impressed despite her professional neutrality. Northwestern Dr. Abernathy, he's the head of pediatric pulmonology. Your daughter will be in excellent hands. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The ride to the hospital in the corporate SUV, the immediate attention from medical staff who seemed to have been expecting them, the thorough examination by Dr. Abernathy, whose manner was both professional and genuinely kind, the battery of tests that would have cost thousands without insurance. Through it all, Lily remained quiet but observant, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with the resilience of a child who had already seen more hardship than most adults. When Dr. Abernathy asked her questions about her symptoms, she answered clearly and precisely, making Ethan's chest swell with pride despite the circumstances. The diagnosis was both a relief and a concern. Lily's asthma had progressed to moderate persistent, requiring a stronger maintenance medication and more frequent monitoring. The new prescription would be more expensive, the follow-up appointments more numerous. But those were tomorrow's problems. Today, Lily was breathing easier, the new medication already working to relax her airways. That was what mattered. As they waited for the final paperwork and prescriptions, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Got your stuff from the locker. Frank's telling everyone you quit. What really happened? Ethan's jaw tightened. Of course, Frank would rewrite the narrative. Admitting he'd fired someone for saving the client's CEO would make him look like the villain he was. The response he typed was brief but honest. Fired for leaving site during emergency. We'll explain later. Thanks for getting my things. Another message arrived, this time from Jessica. Ms. Harrington would like to meet with you tomorrow morning. Car will pick you up at 9 a.m. Please confirm. Ethan stared at the message, uncertainty churning in his stomach. What did Victoria Harrington want with him? A formal thank you, a settlement to prevent negative publicity about the accident, or something else entirely? Whatever it was, he couldn't afford to refuse. Not when Lily's new medications would cost more than his remaining savings. Not when rent was due in 10 days and he had no job prospects. He confirmed the appointment, then pocketed his phone as Dr. Abernathy returned with Lily's discharge papers and prescriptions. Everything's been taken care of, the doctor explained, handing over a small pharmacy bag. These are sample medications to get you started enough for 2 weeks. The prescriptions have already been filled and paid for. You can pick them up at the hospital pharmacy on your way out. Ethan blinked in surprise. Paid for by whom? Harrington Enterprises has covered all expenses, including a 6-month supply of maintenance medication. Dr. Abernathy's expression was curious but professional. They've also arranged follow-up care. You must have friends in high places, Mr. Miller. Not friends, just a chance encounter in an act of basic human decency. The world occasionally rewarded the right thing, it seemed, even as it punished it elsewhere. The ride home was quiet, Lily drowsy from the medication and the emotional toll of the day. She leaned against Ethan's side in the back of the SUV, her breathing finally even and unlabored. The corporate driver maintained a respectful silence, navigating through afternoon traffic with practiced ease. Their apartment building looked shabbier than usual in contrast to the luxury vehicle, the crumbling concrete steps and graffiti-marked walls, a stark reminder of the world to which they belonged. Ethan thanked the driver, who responded with a professional nod before pulling away. Inside, the apartment felt smaller, the worn furniture and patched walls suddenly more noticeable after the pristine environment of Northwestern Memorial. Ethan settled Lily on the couch with her favorite blanket and a glass of water, turning on the ancient television to a channel showing nature documentaries, her preferred background noise when she wasn't feeling well. While she dozed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the final notice from the bank spread before him. $5,000 in 30 days. Impossible before, doubly so now without a job. The stack of bills beside it told a similar story: electricity overdue, rent coming up, credit card maxed out. Tom had dropped off Ethan's belongings from the construction site, his personal tools, a few changes of clothes, the family photograph he kept in his locker. A small mercy in a day filled with extremes. The new medication sat on the counter, a tangible reminder of Victoria Harrington's unexpected generosity. 6 months worth of breathing, 6 months to figure out what came next. Tomorrow's meeting loomed in his thoughts, a question mark at the end of a chaotic day. What did Victoria want? And more importantly, what did Ethan have left to give? He lost his job for doing the right thing, for being a father first and an employee second, for saving someone who probably made more money in a day than he earned in a year. The chain around his neck felt suddenly heavy, the wedding ring that had been Sarah's pressing against his chest like a physical manifestation of responsibility. He pulled it out, the simple gold band catching the late afternoon light filtering through dusty windows. "What would you do?" "Sarah, how do we get through this one?" No answer came, of course, just the distant sound of traffic and the soft, blessed sound of Lily breathing easily for the first time in days. Ethan closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him in waves. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. For now, his daughter was safe, her breathing secured for 6 months. It wasn't nothing. Sometimes it had to be enough. The sound of helicopter blades cut through his thoughts, unusually close and growing louder. Curious, Ethan moved to the window, pulling back the curtain to see 3 sleek black helicopters approaching from the north, flying low over the neighborhood. Strange. Nobody with that kind of transportation ever came to South Chicago, at least not without police escorts and news cameras. The helicopters descended toward the small park 2 blocks from the apartment building, their powerful rotors kicking up swirls of autumn leaves and debris. Neighbors emerged onto balconies and sidewalks, pointing and speculating about the unusual arrival. Lily appeared at his side, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, are those for us?" Ethan laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. "No, sweetheart, nobody sends helicopters for people like us." But even as he said it, his phone buzzed with a message. Unknown number, but the text was clear. "We're here. Ms. Harrington is on her way to your apartment. Please be ready to receive her in 5 minutes." Ethan stared at the message, then back at the helicopters now landed in the park, their rotors slowing to a stop. People in suits emerged, forming a perimeter, and there, descending from the largest helicopter, was a figure he recognized immediately despite the distance. Victoria Harrington had come to South Chicago, to his neighborhood, to his door, and somehow Ethan knew with absolute certainty that his life was about to change forever. A sharp knock echoed through the small apartment, jolting Ethan from his moment of stunned disbelief. The sound was precise, authoritative, not the casual rap of a neighbor or the impatient pounding of the landlord. This was the knock of someone accustomed to doors opening immediately at their command. Lily clutched her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Is that for us, Daddy?" Ethan straightened his shoulders, suddenly painfully aware of the threadbare t-shirt he'd changed into the faded jeans with a small tear at the knee. Not exactly the attire for meeting a CEO worth billions. "Stay here, baby. I'll see who it is." The peephole revealed what he already knew. Victoria Harrington stood in the dingy hallway of his apartment building, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. The contrast was almost comical. Her tailored outfit probably cost more than 6 months of his rent, her perfect posture at odds with the sagging ceiling tiles and flickering fluorescent light above her head. For a fleeting moment, Ethan considered not answering. What could this woman possibly want from him that couldn't wait until tomorrow's meeting? But curiosity and a strange sense of inevitability pushed his hand toward the locks. The door opened with its usual protesting creak. Victoria's eyes met his, her expression unreadable but intense. Her suit had been changed since the accident, this one a deep navy rather than charcoal gray, but equally expensive and impeccable. The only hint of the morning's trauma was a slight discoloration on her wrist where the metal had pressed against her skin. Her gaze moved past him, taking in the modest apartment with a quick, assessing sweep. "Mr. Miller, may I come in? We have matters to discuss that shouldn't wait until tomorrow." Behind her, the security detail remained impassive, professional to the core. Down the hall, Mrs. Garcia peered out from her partially open door, curiosity and concern warring on her weathered face. In the stairwell, other neighbors gathered, whispering and pointing at the unexpected visitors. Ethan stepped back, a wordless invitation. What else could he do? His life had already derailed. He might as well see where this particular track led. Victoria entered with measured steps, her security team remaining outside at a gesture from her hand. The door closed, sealing them in the small space that suddenly felt impossibly cramped. Ethan was acutely aware of every imperfection, the water stain in the corner of the ceiling, the mismatched furniture, the pile of mending next to the second-hand sewing machine where he repaired Lily's clothes to avoid buying new ones. Victoria didn't comment on any of it. Instead, her attention fixed on Lily, who stood hesitantly by the window, curiosity overcoming shyness. Something in Victoria's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You must be Lily. I'm Victoria Harrington. Your father helped me today when I was in trouble." Lily's chin lifted slightly, pride momentarily outweighing intimidation. "He helps everybody. That's what he does." A ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips. "Yes, I believe that's true." She turned back to Ethan, her manner shifting, becoming more direct. "I understand you were terminated from your position today because of your actions to assist me." So she knew. Ethan's jaw tightened, unsure whether to be embarrassed or angry at the situation being laid bare before him. Frank made his choice. I made mine. Victoria nodded once as if confirming something to herself. Mr. Donovan explained his reasoning. Safety protocols, liability concerns, chain of command. Her tone suggested exactly what she thought of those explanations. What he failed to mention was that if you hadn't acted, I would likely be in surgery right now or worse. From a sleek leather portfolio, Ethan hadn't noticed her carrying. Victoria withdrew a manila envelope. "My security team conducted a thorough investigation of the incident. They also looked into your background." Instinctive alarm flared in Ethan's chest. "My background? Standard procedure when someone becomes involved with me or my company in an unexpected way." Victoria's voice remained neutral, matter of fact. Former head mechanic at Joe's Automotive for 9 years, exemplary service record, specialized technical training in German engines. Widower, sole provider for your daughter. Financial difficulties following medical expenses for your late wife. The clinical recitation of his life laid out in bullet points sent a chill down Ethan's spine. So much for privacy in the modern world. Victoria continued, apparently oblivious to his discomfort. "I also learned about your situation at Chicago Heights. The safety concerns you reported that were ignored. Your repeated attempts to follow proper protocols while being pressured to cut corners." She placed the envelope on the small coffee table between them. "Inside, you'll find an offer of employment with Harrington Enterprises. The position is Director of Field Safety Operations, reporting directly to Robert Davis, my Chief Safety Officer. The starting salary is $120,000 annually, with full benefits, including comprehensive health insurance for you and Lily, effective immediately." The figures hit Ethan like a physical blow, momentarily robbing him of breath. $120,000, nearly 4 times his current salary. Health insurance without the crushing deductibles and coverage gaps of his construction worker policy. It had to be a mistake, or a joke, or a dream his desperate mind had conjured in the midst of crisis. Lily edged closer, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Victoria glanced at her, then back to Ethan. "Your daughter's medical needs will be fully covered under our executive health plan. No deductibles, no coverage limits for her asthma treatments." The words penetrated Ethan's shock, touching the deepest fear that had haunted him since Sarah's diagnosis, that Lily would need care he couldn't provide, that he would fail her when she needed him most. Wariness replaced shock. Nothing came without strings, especially from someone like Victoria Harrington. Why would you offer me a position I'm not qualified for?" Victoria's expression remained composed, but something flickered in her eyes, approval perhaps, at his directness. "On the contrary, Mr. Miller, you're precisely qualified for this role. You have extensive hands-on experience. You understand safety from the perspective of the workers, not just the regulators. And most importantly, you've demonstrated that you prioritize human lives over rules, policies, or personal consequences. She moved toward the window, looking out at the gathering crowd near the helicopters. 10 years ago, my husband died in a construction accident, a preventable accident caused by corner cutting and ignored safety protocols. The site manager had filed the proper paperwork, checked all the regulatory boxes, but hadn't actually implemented the safety measures. No one was willing to speak up to risk their job by halting operations when they saw the danger. The revelation hung in the air between them, a piece of herself offered as collateral in their negotiation. Ethan remained silent, recognizing the cost of such vulnerability to someone in her position. Victoria turned back to him, her composure restored, but her eyes holding a new intensity. Harrington Enterprises has the best safety record in the industry on paper. But what I saw today at Chicago Heights tells me we're at risk of the same complacency that killed James. I need someone who sees safety as more than compliance checkboxes. Someone who understands what's really at stake. Ethan glanced at Lily, then back to the envelope containing an offer that would solve every financial problem currently crushing him. It seemed too convenient, too perfect a solution, appearing at his moment of greatest need. His voice remained steady despite the turmoil beneath. I don't have the credentials. No engineering degree, no formal safety certification beyond the basics. Your board would never accept it. A slight smile curved Victoria's lips, the first genuine one he'd seen. My board serves at my pleasure, Mr. Miller, not the other way around. As for credentials, education can be arranged while you work. Experience, however, and the judgment that comes with it can't be taught in any university. Lily tugged gently at Ethan's sleeve, her voice a whisper that wasn't really a whisper. Daddy, does this mean I can keep going to my school and get my medicine? The simple question cut through the complexity of the moment, reducing it to its essence. What mattered here wasn't his pride or suspicion, but Lily's well-being. Victoria watched the exchange, her expression softening further. The position includes a relocation allowance. There's a company-owned apartment in Lincoln Park available immediately. 3 bedrooms, doorman building, walking distance from one of the best public schools in the city. Lincoln Park. A world away from South Chicago and more than just miles. A neighborhood where Lily could play outside without Ethan constantly scanning for danger, where the schools had adequate funding and resources, where her asthma wouldn't be aggravated by industrial pollution. It was too much to process all at once. Ethan's mind raced, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda behind such generosity. Ms. Harrington, I appreciate the offer, I truly do. But I have to ask, what exactly would you expect from me in this role? What's the real job description? Victoria's respect seemed to deepen at the question. Honesty, Mr. Miller. Brutal, uncompromising honesty about our safety practices across all projects. You would have authority to halt operations at any site where you identify serious safety concerns. You would train our site managers, evaluate our protocols, and report directly to Robert about implementation issues. In short, you would be my eyes and ears on the ground, seeing what others miss or choose to ignore. She stepped closer, her voice lowering with intensity. I'm not offering charity, Mr. Miller. I'm offering a mutually beneficial arrangement. You need financial security and health care for your daughter. I need someone who values human life over profits and protocols. Someone who will act when others stand by regardless of personal cost. A week ago, even a day ago, such an offer would have seemed like fantasy. But standing in his apartment with helicopters waiting outside and his daughter's future hanging in the balance, Ethan recognized the moment for what it was, a fork in the road of his life, as significant as when he'd first held Lily in his arms, as when he'd said goodbye to Sarah for the final time. Some decisions altered everything that followed. This was one of them. Ethan extended his hand, meeting Victoria's gaze directly. When do I start? The Lincoln Park apartment exceeded even Ethan's imagination. Located on the 12th floor of a renovated pre-war building, the space was flooded with natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the lake. 3 generously sized bedrooms, 2 bathrooms with fixtures that didn't leak or require jiggling, a kitchen with appliances that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread rather than a home where actual cooking occurred. Lily raced from room to room, her excited voice echoing off walls that had never known water damage or mold. Daddy, the bathtub has jets in it, and look at this closet, it's bigger than my whole bedroom was. The corporate relocation team had moved with military precision, transferring their meager belongings from South Chicago and arranging them artfully in the new space. Ethan's worn tools looked out of place on custom shelving in the apartment's dedicated storage room. Lily's modest collection of books and toys barely filled a corner of her enormous new bedroom. Their old sofa and kitchen table had disappeared, replaced by elegant furnishings that matched the apartment's upscale aesthetic. A note on the counter explained that the original furniture had been placed in storage, available whenever he wished to reclaim it. A thoughtful touch that somehow made the transformation more jarring rather than less. Ethan stood at the massive windows, gazing out at a view of the city he'd helped build, but never experienced from this perspective. 12 floors up, the urban landscape transformed from gritty reality to picturesque skyline. From here, the scaffolding and construction sites looked like ambitious art installations, rather than places where men risk their lives daily for subsistence wages. Behind him, the doorbell chimed, another novelty in a day filled with them. The display panel showed Jessica, Victoria's assistant, holding a large gift basket and several shopping bags. She entered with professional efficiency, setting the items on the kitchen island. Ms. Harrington sends these as a welcome gift. Groceries to stock your kitchen, some necessity to get you through until you have time to shop, and information about the neighborhood. Her gaze softened as Lily peered curiously around the corner. And something special for you, Lily. Ms. Harrington mentioned you like science and animals. The something special turned out to be a deluxe microscope, set complete with prepared slides and a guidebook for young scientists. Lily's eyes widened with wonder as Jessica demonstrated how to adjust the focus. Ethan watched the exchange with mixed emotions. The gift was thoughtful, educational rather than frivolous, exactly the kind of thing he would choose if money were no object. Yet it also highlighted how thoroughly Victoria had researched their lives, how completely they had been assessed and evaluated before this opportunity materialized. Jessica turned back to Ethan, her professional demeanor returning. Your new wardrobe should arrive tomorrow. Robert asked me to remind you that the orientation meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday. A car will pick you up at 8:15. New wardrobe, car service, orientation meeting. The trappings of a life he hadn't earned through traditional channels, hadn't worked his way up to through years of ladder climbing and credential gathering. The imposter syndrome that had been building since Victoria's offer now threatened to overwhelm him. Will they see right through me? A mechanic playing dress-up as an executive. Jessica seemed to sense his discomfort. If there's anything you need day or night, please don't hesitate to call. The transition can be overwhelming. Ms. Harrington understands that. After she left, Ethan explored the apartment more thoroughly, noting the top-of-the-line security system, the fully stocked medicine cabinet, with Lily's prescriptions arranged neatly on the top shelf, the refrigerator already filled with fresh food. Every detail had been considered, every potential need anticipated. It was both comforting and vaguely unsettling, like being cared for by an omniscient but benevolent entity. In the master bedroom, he discovered a garment bag hanging in the closet. Inside was a single tailored suit in charcoal gray, a crisp white shirt, and a blue tie that somehow matched his eyes exactly. A card attached read simply, "For Monday, VH." Ethan ran his fingers over the fine wool, recognizing quality that exceeded anything he'd ever owned. The suit represented more than clothing. It was a uniform for a role he wasn't sure he could play convincingly, a costume for a life that still felt like someone else's. Lily appeared in the doorway, the excitement of exploration giving way to uncertainty. Daddy, are we really going to live here now or never? The question carried layers of meaning. Forever was a concept Lily approached cautiously since Sarah's death. Forever had proven unreliable in her young experience. Ethan knelt to her level, meeting her eyes directly. This is our home now for as long as we want it to be. But home isn't really about the place, Lil. It's about us being together. That's what's forever. She nodded solemnly, processing this in her careful way. Will my new school be nice? Will they know about my asthma? Everything's been arranged. The school has a full-time nurse, and all your teachers will know what to do if you have trouble breathing. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, his heart constricting at her resilience. And you'll make new friends. You're the friendliest kid in Chicago, remember? A small smile formed, tentative but genuine. Can I paint my room? The walls are so white. Ethan laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the large space. I'm pretty sure we can paint it whatever color you want. What are you thinking? Still purple? Maybe blue, like the lake. She glanced toward the window where the vast expanse of Lake Michigan sparkled in the afternoon light. I've never seen so much water before. The observation struck Ethan with unexpected force. 7 years old and Lily had never truly experienced the Great Lake that defined their city. The beaches had always been too far, too expensive to reach regularly, the water quality too questionable near their neighborhood. Such a simple thing, seeing the lake, and yet it had been beyond their reach until now. What else had she missed? Or what other experiences, educational opportunities, healthcare options had been inaccessible simply because of where and how they lived? The weight of these questions followed Ethan through the weekend as they settled into their new home. Each discovery, the building's swimming pool in the basement, the doorman who greeted Lily by name after just one meeting, the farmer's market within walking distance on Saturday morning, highlighted the stark differences between their old life and this unexpected new one. By Monday morning, Ethan had cycled through every emotion from gratitude to suspicion to determination. Standing before the bathroom mirror in his new suit, he hardly recognized himself. The tailoring concealed the slight asymmetry of his shoulders from years of physical labor. The subtle patterns in the tie drew attention to his face rather than the calluses on his hands. He looked legitimate, like someone who belonged in the corporate headquarters of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. The facade was so convincing, it almost made him believe it himself. Lily watched from the doorway, her school uniform, another new experience pressed and ready for her first day. "You look handsome, Daddy, like the dads in movies." Ethan adjusted his tie one final time. "How do you feel about today, nervous?" She nodded, vulnerability showing through her brave face. "What if the other kids don't like me? What if I have an asthma attack and everybody stares?" Ethan knelt, careful not to wrinkle his suit pants. "Listen to me, Lil. You are smart, kind, and braver than anyone I know. The other kids will see that. As for your asthma, everyone has something they deal with. Some people's challenges are just more visible than others." His phone chimed with a notification the car had arrived downstairs. Another surreal moment in a weekend filled with them. The doorman greeted them with practiced courtesy, ushering them toward a sleek black SUV identical to the one that had transported them after the hospital visit. A different driver held the door, his manner professional but warm. The drive to Lily's new school took them along Lakeshore Drive, the morning sun turning the water into a glittering expanse. Lily pressed her face to the window, absorbing every detail of their new reality. Ethan did the same, cataloging the changes not just in their physical surroundings, but in Lily herself. Already she seemed to sit straighter, her demeanor reflecting the quiet confidence that comes with security. "It's worth it. Whatever this job entails, whatever challenges lie ahead, seeing her like this makes it worth it." Canterbury Academy occupied a stately brick building surrounded by carefully tended grounds. Unlike Winston Elementary with its chain-link fence and concrete playground, Canterbury offered green space sports facilities and an atmosphere of cultivated learning. Children in matching uniforms entered through the grand doors, many accompanied by parents in business attire similar to Ethan's new suit. The principal met them personally, another courtesy arranged by Victoria, no doubt. Dr. Eleanor Thompson was a poised woman in her 50s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses in a manner that put both Ethan and Lily at ease immediately. She knelt to Lily's level, her smile genuine. "You must be Lily Miller. We're so happy you're joining us today. Your new teacher, Miss Abernathy, has been looking forward to meeting you. She loves science just as much as you do." Lily's grip on Ethan's hand loosened slightly, interest overcoming anxiety. "Does she have a microscope too?" "She has an entire science corner in the classroom. Would you like to see it?" Dr. Thompson extended her hand, which Lily took after a moment's hesitation. Ethan watched as his daughter was gently led into her new school, her small shoulders squared with determination beneath her new backpack. She paused at the entrance, turning to wave once before disappearing inside. The moment crystallized everything: the sacrifice of independence for security of pride, for opportunity of the familiar, for the promising unknown. Back in the SUV, Ethan steeled himself for the next transition. Harrington Enterprises headquarters occupied the top 15 floors of a gleaming downtown skyscraper he'd passed countless times without imagining he would ever enter, except perhaps as maintenance staff. Now he was arriving as Director of Field Safety Operations, a title that still felt foreign on his tongue. The lobby was a study in understated luxury marble floors, soaring ceilings, art installations that probably cost more than he'd earned in his lifetime. Security was equally elegant but thorough, with his ID already prepared and waiting. The escort who met him by the executive elevators introduced himself as Michael Head of Victoria's security detail, and one of the men who had accompanied her to Ethan's apartment. Michael's manner was courteous, but assessing his gaze, taking in details with professional precision. Ms. Harrington asked me to bring you directly to the executive floor after Robert gives you the orientation tour. She wants to introduce you personally at the morning operations meeting. The elevator ascended with smooth efficiency, its glass wall offering increasingly spectacular views of the city. Ethan's stomach lurched not from the rapid ascent, but from the growing realization of what awaited. He was about to be presented to a room full of executives with advanced degrees, years of corporate experience, and every reason to resent his unorthodox appointment. Robert Davis was waiting when the elevator doors opened on the 30th floor. A solid man in his mid-50s with salt and pepper hair and the bearing of someone who had seen genuine danger in his life, Robert extended his hand with genuine warmth. "Welcome aboard, Miller. Victoria's told me about your background. Impressive work at the accident site." Ethan shook the offered hand, recognizing the firm grip of someone who had done physical labor before rising to management. "Thank you, sir. I'm still trying to understand exactly what my role here entails." Robert's laugh was genuine. "Drop the sir, we're colleagues now. And as for your role, you're going to help me drag this company's safety culture into reality instead of just looking good on paper." Over the next hour, Robert provided a crash course in Harrington Enterprises' operations safety protocols and corporate structure. The company had expanded dramatically under Victoria's leadership, diversifying from pure construction into real estate development, property management, and sustainable building technology. With over 15,000 employees and dozens of active projects across the country, the scope was far larger than Ethan had imagined. Robert didn't sugarcoat the challenges. "We've got the best safety record in the industry on paper. 3 years without a major reportable incident. But what Victoria saw at Chicago Heights confirmed what I've been trying to tell the board: we're developing blind spots. Site managers checking boxes without implementing protocols. Workers afraid to report violations for fear of retaliation. The exact conditions that led to James Harrington's death 10 years ago." They paused before a memorial hall near the safety department offices. A photograph showed a younger Victoria beside a smiling man with kind eyes and a confident stance. James Harrington looked nothing like the corporate titan Ethan had imagined. His expression was open, his posture relaxed, his eyes crinkling at the corners in genuine mirth. Robert's voice softened. James was a hands-on leader. Started as an engineer, believed in visiting every site, talking to the workers directly. After he died, Victoria transformed the company, quadrupled its size and value. But in some ways, we've lost that direct connection to the work itself. The unspoken implication hung between them. Ethan was meant to restore that connection, to be the bridge between the executive suite and the construction site, to see what others missed because they hadn't lived it themselves. Robert checked his watch. "We should head up. The operations meeting starts in 5 minutes, and Victoria likes punctuality." The executive floor occupied the pinnacle of the tower, offering 360-degree views of Chicago and Lake Michigan beyond. The boardroom where the operations meeting would take place featured a massive table of polished wood, each seat equipped with embedded technology that made Ethan's old flip phone seem like a relic from another century. Executives filed in, each impeccably dressed and carrying the tablets or sleek laptops. Their glances toward Ethan ranged from curious to dismissive to openly hostile. One middle-aged man in particular, Bradley Wilson, according to Robert's whispered identification, regarded him with undisguised disdain. Victoria entered last, her presence immediately commanding attention without visible effort. She wore a tailored burgundy suit that managed to be both authoritative and feminine. Her only jewelry, a simple watch and wedding band, she apparently still wore a decade after James's death. Her gaze met Ethan's briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between them before she addressed the room. "Good morning, everyone. Before we begin our regular agenda, I'd like to introduce Ethan Miller, our new Director of Field Safety Operations, reporting directly to Robert." The announcement sent a ripple through the assembled executives. Bradley Wilson's expression darkened from disdain to outright displeasure. Victoria continued smoothly. "Mr. Miller comes to us with extensive hands-on experience in construction and mechanical systems. More importantly, he brings a perspective we've been lacking: direct knowledge of how our safety protocols are actually implemented on site, not just how they appear in reports." She gestured toward Ethan. "Many of you have heard about the incident at Chicago Heights last week. What you may not know is that Mr. Miller was terminated from his position for leaving his assigned area to assist when my vehicle was struck. His actions prevented what could have been a serious injury or worse. The revelation shifted the atmosphere in the room and executives reassessing Ethan with new interest. All except Bradley Wilson, whose scowl deepened. Victoria's voice took on an edge of steel beneath its professional veneer. This is precisely the type of judgment we need, prioritizing human safety over rigid adherence to protocols that don't account for unexpected circumstances. Mr. Miller will be conducting site visits and safety audits across all our active projects with full authority to halt operations if he identifies serious concerns. Bradley Wilson could no longer contain himself. With all due respect, Victoria, this is unprecedented. Mr. Miller lacks the qualifications outlined in our corporate governance documents for a director-level position. No engineering degree, no OSHA certification, no management experience. The board will have serious questions about this appointment. The room fell silent, tension crackling like static electricity. Everyone present knew challenging Victoria Harrington directly in a meeting was either very brave or very foolish, depending on the outcome. Victoria's expression remained composed, but her eyes hardened perceptibly. The board serves at the pleasure of the majority shareholder, Bradley, which remains me. She paused, allowing the reminder to sink in. As for qualifications, Mr. Miller will be completing his certifications while working. Robert will oversee his integration into the role. Her gaze swept the room, including everyone in her next statement. Let me be absolutely clear. Harrington Enterprises will not repeat the mistakes that cost my husband his life. We will not prioritize paperwork over people, and we will not allow a culture of fear to prevent workers from speaking up when they see dangerous conditions. The declaration hung in the air, powerful in its simplicity, and the emotion barely contained beneath its professional delivery. Even Bradley Wilson fell silent, recognizing he had miscalculated badly. Victoria gestured to the empty seat beside Robert. Please join us, Mr. Miller. I believe you'll find today's discussion about the Chicago Heights situation particularly relevant to your new role. Ethan took his place at the table, acutely aware of the eyes upon him. The suit might look right, the title might sound impressive, but he was still an outsider here. A blue-collar worker suddenly thrust into a world of power suits and corporate politics. The learning curve ahead was steeper than any construction site he'd ever scaled. But as the meeting progressed and he listened to discussions about Chicago Heights discussions that frequently missed crucial realities of construction site dynamics, Ethan began to understand why Victoria had brought him here. These brilliant, accomplished executives with their MBAs and engineering degrees lacked fundamental understanding of how things actually worked on the ground. They analyzed data without context, made decisions based on reports rather than realities. When Bradley Wilson dismissed a safety concern as standard industry practice, Ethan found himself speaking up before he could reconsider. Standard doesn't mean safe. All eyes turned to him, surprise evident on most faces. I worked that site for 6 months. What the reports call temporary storage solutions for volatile materials were actually just chemical drums stacked in the stairwells because the proper storage areas weren't built yet. Every worker knew it was dangerous. Every worker complained about it. But when the safety inspectors came through, those drums mysteriously disappeared for a day. The room fell silent, executives exchanging uncomfortable glances. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes conveyed approval. Robert leaned forward. Do you have documentation of these complaints, Ethan? Not officially. Nobody wanted to put it in writing and risk their jobs. But I can tell you exactly who moved those drums and where they put them during inspections. And I'd bet every other site has similar stories. Victoria's voice cut through the resulting murmurs. This is precisely why Mr. Miller is here. To tell us what's really happening, not what's being reported. Her gaze fixed on Bradley Wilson, and why his perspective is more valuable than another credential on the wall. The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted subtly. Several executives began directing questions to Ethan, seeking his input on practical implications of policies being discussed. Others remained skeptical, but watchful, reassessing their initial judgments. By the meeting's end, Ethan had spoken more than he'd expected, drawing on years of hands-on experience to illuminate blind spots in corporate thinking. It wasn't eloquent or polished, but it was honest, grounded in reality rather than theory or reports. As the executives filed out, Bradley Wilson lingered, approaching Ethan with barely concealed hostility. Impressive first day, Miller. Victoria clearly sees something in you. The words dripped with insinuation. Just remember, construction sites aren't the only places with hazards. corporate politics can be equally dangerous for the unprepared. The threat was thinly veiled, but Ethan met it with the steady gaze of someone who had faced more concrete dangers. I appreciate the warning, Mr. Wilson, but I've worked jobs where a mistake means someone dies, not just that quarterly numbers miss projections. Different kind of pressure. Wilson's expression hardened, but before he could respond, Victoria appeared beside them. Bradley, I need you at the investor call in 5 minutes. Her tone left no room for delay or argument. With a final measuring look at Ethan, Wilson departed, leaving them alone in the boardroom. Victoria studied Ethan's face. You did well, better than I expected, honestly. Did you set that up? Put me on the spot to see how I'd handle it. A slight smile touched her lips. I didn't need to. Bradley's ambition makes him predictable, but I was curious how you'd respond. Ethan glanced out at the spectacular view the city spread below them like a living map. From this height, the construction sites where he'd spent the past year looked insignificant, tiny pieces in a vast urban puzzle. Yet each one represented hundreds of lives, families, depending on those workers returning home safely each night. The reality of his new position settled on his shoulders heavier than any load he'd carried on a job site. I'm not a corporate politician, Ms. Harrington. I don't know how to navigate boardroom battles or handle people like Bradley Wilson. Victoria, please. And you don't need to be a politician. You need to be exactly what you are: honest, direct, and unwilling to compromise on safety. She moved closer to the window, her reflection superimposed on the city below. As for Bradley and others like him, leave them to me. Your job is to find the truth. Mine is to make sure you can speak it without fear of consequences. The assurance should have been comforting, but something in her tone, a hint of isolation, perhaps reminded Ethan that Victoria fought her own battles every day in this rarefied atmosphere. Her power was real, but so was her solitude at the top of the corporate structure she'd built. A different kind of strength than hauling steel beams or operating heavy machinery, but strength nonetheless. Ethan's phone vibrated with a message: Canterbury Academy regarding Lily. His heart rate spiked momentarily before he read the content. Lily had impressed her science teacher with her knowledge of respiratory systems, a subject she'd become intimately familiar with through her own condition. The teacher wanted permission to move her into the advanced science group. Relief and pride washed through him in equal measure. One day in her new school, and already Lily was thriving, her natural intelligence finally meeting appropriate challenges and recognition. Victoria noticed the change in his expression. Good news. Lily's doing well at her new school, really well. He pocketed the phone, reality settling around him with newfound clarity. I need to make this work, not just for the salary or the benefits, but for her future, for the opportunities she deserves. Victoria's expression softened with understanding. We all have our motivations, Ethan. Mine is preventing another family from experiencing what I did when James died. Yours is securing your daughter's future. Different paths, same destination, making sure people go home safely at the end of the day. She extended her hand, a gesture both professional and oddly personal in the empty boardroom. Welcome to Harrington Enterprises. I think we're going to change things for the better, you and I. As Ethan shook her hand, the weight of his new responsibility settled more firmly on his shoulders, not lighter, but somehow more balanced. This wasn't just a buying, it was a mission. A chance to ensure other children didn't lose parents to preventable accidents, other workers didn't sacrifice safety for fear of losing livelihoods. A purpose worthy of the sacrifice of pride, worthy of stepping into a world where he didn't naturally belong. For Lily, for men like Tom, for families like his own. Revised Part 3. 6 months into his role at Harrington Enterprises, Ethan found himself walking the 30th inspection site since his appointment. The Westlake development, a mid-sized commercial project, reflected the profound changes he'd implemented across the company. Workers greeted him by name. Site managers shared concerns openly rather than hiding problems. And safety protocols were followed not just when inspectors visited. What had begun as suspicion toward the CEO's pet project had evolved into genuine respect. Built on results, Ethan's initiatives had reduced workplace accidents by 38%, while improving project completion times by 12%. The morning sun glinted off his company tablet as he reviewed final compliance data. These daily moments still occasionally struck him as surreal, the former construction worker now wielding authority that could halt multi-million-dollar projects with a signature. His weathered hands, still bearing calluses despite 6 months in management, moved confidently across the screen, authorizing the final safety certification. All clear, boss. The site foreman, a veteran named Ramirez, who'd initially been among the most skeptical of Ethan's appointment, waited expectantly. Ethan nodded, sending the approval with a tap. Clean report. Your team's implementation of the new scaffold protocols is exactly what we needed across all sites. I'm recommending your approach as the company standard. The pride in Ramirez's expression reflected another victory in the cultural transformation Ethan had championed, recognition flowing to those who prioritize safety, not just those who cut costs or accelerated timelines. Back in the company SUV, Ethan checked his schedule for the quarterly safety review with Victoria and the executive team that afternoon. His phone buzzed with a text from Tom Jenkins, whom Ethan had recruited from Chicago Heights 3 months earlier to lead hands-on safety training. The older man had found new purpose in his role, his decades of experience finally valued beyond measure. Lunch today, got something to run by you, Tom's message read. Before Ethan could respond, another notification appeared, a message from Victoria marked urgent. The content sent a cold ripple down his spine. Anonymous tip received about Lakefront Tower. Possible serious safety compromises. Need your eyes on this immediately. Michael will meet you there. The Lakefront Tower project represented everything Harrington Enterprises publicly stood for. Sustainable luxury development incorporating James Harrington's patented safety innovations. The flagship project carried premium pricing justified by these proprietary systems. If corners were being cut there, the implications would extend far beyond a single building. 20 minutes later, Michael opened the SUV door outside the construction site. The head of security's expression was grimmer than usual. Ms. Harrington received detailed photographs yesterday evening showing what appears to be substitution of standard materials for the proprietary systems specified in the designs. She's kept this between only us three for now. Ethan absorbed this, understanding the significance of Victoria's discretion. She suspects someone high-level is involved. Michael nodded, once his crisp professionalism never wavering. She's loaded override access to all areas onto your badge. I'll accompany you, but this is your inspection. The site manager, Diana Chen, materialized almost instantly when they passed the security checkpoint, her welcoming smile not quite reaching her eyes. Mr. Miller, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you today. Routine follow-up. Ethan maintained casual professionalism while noting the subtle tension in Diana's posture. I'd like to see how the sustainability systems integration is progressing. Of course, we're actually ahead of schedule on those installations. Her response came too quickly, too smoothly. I'd be happy to show you the completed sections on the upper levels. Let's start with the foundation reinforcements on the lake-facing side. Ethan countered, watching carefully for her reaction. The momentary freeze in Diana's expression confirmed his suspicions. That area is currently closed for concrete, curing very sensitive timing window. Perhaps we could schedule that for tomorrow. I'll observe without disrupting the curing process. Ethan's tone remained pleasant but firm. Standard inspection protocol ground up. Relief flickered briefly across Diana's face. Certainly. Let me alert the supervisors so they're prepared. As she stepped away to make calls, Michael moved closer. She's warning someone. Yes, and we're going to find out who. The inspection began conventionally, workers demonstrating textbook compliance in visible areas, documentation meticulously organized. Yet subtle discrepancies accumulated as they progressed through the structure. Supervisors appeared excessively prepared areas, too recently organized paperwork, too perfectly aligned with the requirements. On the 12th floor, Ethan spotted the first concrete evidence of deception. The fire suppression system installed during an active maintenance procedure used standard commercial components rather than the proprietary HydroShield technology developed by James Harrington and prominently featured in marketing materials. Without comment, Ethan documented the discrepancy, his tablet automatically logging location and timestamp. Diana's increasingly frequent calls and text messages betrayed growing anxiety as they continued upward through the building. By the 27th floor, the pattern was unmistakable. Corners cut on non-visible systems, inferior materials substituted throughout the internal infrastructure, safety redundancies eliminated to accelerate timelines and reduce costs. None of the violations would be apparent to building inspectors focused on minimum code requirements rather than the premium standards Harrington promised its clients. Diana received a call that transformed her expression from controlled concern to barely concealed panic. Mr. Miller, an urgent situation requires my attention. My assistant will continue. I need to see the foundation reinforcements now, Diana. Ethan abandoned the pretense of routine inspection. Not tomorrow, not after consulting with whoever's been messaging you. Now, their confrontation hung in the air, Diana's professional facade cracking under pressure. Those areas are restricted for safety reasons. Don't cite safety protocols to me. Ethan's voice remained level despite the intensity beneath. Either take me there, or I'll use override access and go myself. Diana's shoulders slumped in defeat. The calculation visible in her eyes: cooperate and potentially salvage some control over the situation, or resist and guarantee complete exposure. Follow me, but I want it on record that I advised against disturbing the ongoing work. The descent to the foundation level required bypassing 2 security checkpoints, where guards clearly expected to turn them away until Michael displayed Victoria's direct authorization. The foundation area, designed to withstand both Chicago winters and Lake Michigan's erosive pressure, revealed violations exceeding Ethan's worst expectations. The specialized water-resistant concrete mixture specified in designs had been replaced with standard commercial grade. The proprietary reinforcement system, James Harrington's patented technology that justified premium prices, was entirely absent, substituted with conventional materials that would begin degrading within 5 years. Most critically, safety redundancies designed to prevent catastrophic failure had been eliminated entirely. Ethan documented everything methodically, building a comprehensive case of deliberate fraud, not mere cost-cutting or timeline acceleration, but calculated deception designed to maximize profit while providing residents a false sense of security. Who authorized these changes? Ethan finally asked, turning to Diana. Her response wasn't directed at him, but at someone behind him. I followed the modified specifications exactly as provided. Every change was approved at the executive level. Bradley Wilson stood at the entrance to the foundation area, 2 security guards flanking him. His expression conveyed not surprise, but cold fury at being caught. This is a restricted area, Miller. Your inspection authority doesn't extend to active construction zones without proper clearance. Ethan held up his tablet, displaying Victoria's authorization. I have all the clearance I need. The question is why Harrington's flagship project is being built with substandard materials while charging premium prices for proprietary technology that isn't actually installed. Bradley's smile never reached his eyes. Design optimizations, cost-benefit analysis showed the original specifications were unnecessarily conservative. My team adjusted for market realities. These aren't optimizations. They're fraudulent substitutions that compromise the entire structure. Ethan advanced months of accumulated frustration with Bradley's obstruction, finding focus in this moment of clarity. People are paying millions for condos marketed as having James Harrington's safety innovations that don't exist in this building. Market positioning and technical implementation are different concerns. Bradley's dismissive tone revealed his fundamental contempt. No regulations have been violated. The building meets all code requirements. It's not about meeting minimum code. It's about delivering what customers are paying for. Ethan gestured toward the substandard materials surrounding them. Does Victoria know you've gutted her husband's legacy to increase your department's profit margins? The question struck home, Bradley's composure slipping momentarily. Victoria approves overall project parameters, not specific implementation details. She understands the realities of remaining competitive in this market. You're gambling with lives to pad quarterly numbers. Ethan's voice hardened. This building will start failing within 5 years. Maybe sooner, with climate change accelerating lake-level fluctuations. Bradley stepped closer. You're out of your depth, Miller. This isn't a construction site where you can throw around accusations based on your limited understanding. These decisions involve complex financial and engineering trade-offs that someone with your background couldn't possibly comprehend. I understand enough. Ethan held up the tablet. Documentation of every substitution, every eliminated safety feature, every fraudulent implementation. Comparison photos showing what's marketed versus what's actually installed. Time-stamped and location verified. Bradley's expression darkened. That tablet is company property containing proprietary information. Hand it over immediately. The data is already uploaded to the secure server Victoria and I established for the safety audit program. Ethan's preparation for exactly this scenario paid off in Bradley's momentary flash of alarm. Copies sent automatically to Victoria and Robert, secured against deletion even by executive override. The security guards shifted, uncomfortably caught between conflicting authority structures. Bradley calculated his next move with practiced precision. This is a simple misunderstanding that we can resolve internally. I suggest we continue this discussion in my office. There's nothing to discuss. Victoria needs to see this immediately. Bradley's phone rang, the caller ID displaying Victoria's name, confirmation that the uploaded evidence had reached her. His expression shifted from controlled anger to calculating damage control as he answered. The conversation was brief, his responses clipped and professional despite the visible tension in his posture. When he disconnected, his gaze fixed on Ethan with cold hatred barely concealed beneath corporate veneer. Victoria has ordered an immediate halt to all construction activities. She's on her way with the general counsel and independent engineers. Each word seemed forced through clenched teeth. Congratulations, Miller. You've just delayed Harrington's flagship project by months, possibly years. I hope you're prepared for the consequences when the board reviews the financial impact. 6 months earlier, such a threat might have intimidated Ethan when his position felt tenuous and his confidence in corporate settings minimal. Now, standing amid concrete evidence of corporate malfeasance that could have resulted in catastrophic failure and potential loss of life, he found perfect clarity. Some things matter more than quarterly profits, Bradley. People's lives matter more. Truth matters more. Ethan glanced around at the foundation that would have eventually failed the building that would have eventually collapsed. If protecting people from this kind of deliberate endangerment cost me my job, I can live with that. Can you live with what would have happened if this had never been discovered? The question hung between them, unanswered and perhaps unanswerable from Bradley's perspective, where human costs were just another variable in financial equations. Victoria arrived with the efficiency of deployed emergency services, general counsel, independent engineers, corporate security, and Robert Davis forming a coordinated response team that secured the site and began comprehensive documentation. Her expression remained composed, but fury radiated from her in almost tangible waves as the engineers confirmed each of Ethan's findings. Bradley maintained professional demeanor throughout the initial investigation, offering technical explanations and deflecting responsibility toward unnamed subordinates. The performance might have been convincing to outsiders, but Victoria's increasing coldness suggested she saw through the facade. When the preliminary assessment concluded, Victoria addressed the assembled team with controlled precision. Lakefront Tower construction is officially suspended pending full independent audit. All marketing materials will be amended immediately to reflect actual specifications rather than promised ones. Bradley, Diana, you'll both provide complete documentation of every modification from original plans, including authorization chains and financial impacts. Bradley attempted interjection, but Victoria's raised hands silenced him instantly. The board meets at 4 this afternoon. I expect comprehensive explanations from everyone involved. Her gaze swept the group before landing on Ethan. Mr. Miller, we need to speak privately. They retreated to this temporary site office, hastily vacated by project managers, sensing the corporate equivalent of an approaching tornado. Victoria closed the door, the professional mask dropping to reveal raw fury beneath. James designed those foundation systems, spent years perfecting them. Her voice remained low but vibrated with controlled rage. They were meant to be his legacy, safety innovations that would save lives while making sustainable lakefront development possible. Ethan maintained respectful silence, recognizing the personal betrayal beneath the professional one. Victoria paced the small space, energy too intense for stillness. Bradley presented budget adjustments for this project last quarter, claimed they were optimizing unnecessary redundancies while maintaining all critical safety parameters. I trusted his department's assessment because he had the engineering credentials I lack. The admission of vulnerability clearly cost her. Victoria Harrington was not accustomed to being outmaneuvered, particularly on matters connected to her husband's work. The board will demand accountability. Bradley has allies, their relationships cultivated over years. She stopped pacing, facing Ethan directly. This could get ugly, very ugly. He'll claim you're not qualified to make these assessments, that you've overreached your authority to impress me. The implication hung in the air between them. Bradley would attack not just Ethan's professional judgment, but suggest personal motivations, inappropriate connections between Ethan and Victoria that allegedly clouded her judgment. Ethan met her gaze steadily. The engineering reports will speak for themselves. This isn't about credentials or authority, it's about observable facts. The specified materials aren't there. The proprietary systems aren't installed. The safety redundancies don't exist. Victoria's expression softened momentarily. You sound like James. He had the same unshakable clarity about right and wrong. Her voice caught slightly on her late husband's name. It made him enemies in the corporate world. People like Bradley who see everything as negotiable, every principle as having a price. Outside, the sounds of construction had ceased entirely, an eerie silence where there should have been the constant symphony of heavy equipment and worker activity. Hundreds of jobs temporarily suspended, millions in costs and delays accumulating by the hour, corporate reputation hanging in the balance. Victoria straightened, the brief moment of personal reflection replaced by resolute determination. The board meeting will be challenging. Bradley has allies, but ultimately the company remains under my control. This stops here. 4 hours later, Ethan sat in the Harrington Enterprises boardroom, the atmosphere charged with tension. Board members occupied one side of the massive table, executives, including Bradley Wilson, the other. Victoria presided at the head, her expression giving nothing away as the independent engineering team presented their preliminary findings. The evidence was damning beyond dispute. Systematic replacement of premium materials with substandard alternatives, elimination of crucial safety features, fraudulent documentation to conceal the substitutions. Most disturbing was the calculated nature of the fraud, targeting components that would remain invisible after construction completed, preserving surface appearances while compromising structural integrity. When the presentation concluded, Victoria addressed the room with measured precision. To summarize, Harrington Enterprises has been selling luxury condominiums at premium prices based on proprietary safety and sustainability features that were never actually installed. We have committed fraud against our customers and compromised the safety of the building. The potential liability is incalculable. Bradley leaned forward, his tone reasonable and controlled. These findings represent one interpretation of complex engineering decisions. The modifications were made to optimize return on investment while maintaining all legally required safety parameters. No laws or building codes have been violated. A silver-haired board member raised a manicured hand. The issue isn't just legal compliance, Bradley. It's that we're charging premium prices specifically for James Harrington's proprietary systems while installing standard commercial alternatives. That crosses the line from optimization to fraudulent misrepresentation. Bradley's strategy shifted instantly. The marketing materials were developed by separate teams without direct input from engineering. If communication failures occurred, that represents a systemic issue requiring comprehensive review, not individual blame assignment. Victoria's voice cut through the emerging crosstalk. The documentation is clear, Bradley. Your personal approval appears on every modification. Your department calculated the exact savings from each substitution. This wasn't miscommunication. It was deliberate deception for financial gain. With respect, Victoria, you're allowing personal factors to cloud your judgment. Bradley's gaze flickered meaningfully toward Ethan. Mr. Miller lacks the qualifications to properly evaluate engineering decisions of this complexity. His background as a construction worker hardly prepares him for assessing sophisticated trade-offs in building systems. Yet you've given his opinions precedence over experienced executives with actual credentials. And there it was, the insinuation that had been brewing for months now openly voiced in the boardroom. That Victoria's trust in Ethan stemmed from personal rather than professional considerations, that her judgment had been compromised by inappropriate influence. Before Victoria could respond, Ethan stood, tablet in hand. The qualifications argument might work if this were a matter of engineering theory or financial projections. It's not. It's simple, observable fact. He activated the display screen showing side-by-side comparisons of specified materials versus actual installations. You don't need an engineering degree to see that these are not the same components, or that the safety systems shown in marketing materials don't exist in the actual building. He advanced through the evidence, methodically drawing on the confidence he'd built over 6 months of successful site inspections across the company. These aren't complex trade-offs. They're deliberate substitutions designed to increase profit margins while maintaining the illusion of premium construction. The intention was that no one would ever know the inferior materials would be concealed behind walls and beneath floors, invisible, until failure occurred years later. Bradley's composure cracked, frustration bleeding through corporate veneer. This self-righteous posturing from a glorified construction worker with no understanding of market realities is exactly my point. Victoria has elevated him beyond his capabilities because he happened to be in the right place when my car accident occurred. His supposed insights are nothing more than basic observations any site inspector could make. Yet she's given him director-level authority and compensation. Victoria's expression remained composed, but ice crystallized in her voice. Mr. Miller's observations were confirmed by 3 independent engineering firms, Bradley. His basic assessment was entirely accurate, while your sophisticated explanations were deliberately misleading. That speaks to judgment, not credentials. She stood commanding the room's full attention. The board has a simple choice. We can acknowledge the fraud halt construction until all specifications are restored to original standards, offer existing buyers the option to maintain their contracts with appropriate disclosures or receive full refunds, or we can continue building a fundamentally compromised structure while charging premium prices for features that don't exist, exposing the company to catastrophic liability when inevitable failures occur. The oldest board member cleared his throat. The financial impact of halting construction and offering refunds would be severe. Quarterly projections would be missed. Stock value would likely decrease significantly in the short term. Yes, Victoria's acknowledgement was unflinching, and the impact of proceeding with fraudulent construction would be the eventual collapse of both the building and this company. Some costs cannot be optimized away. Some corners cannot be cut without consequences. This is the line we will not cross. Her gaze swept the room, settling finally on Bradley. Harrington Enterprises was founded on James's belief that profit and integrity could coexist, that premium prices should reflect genuine value. We've lost sight of that principle in pursuing quarterly targets and market position. The declaration hung in the air, forcing each person present to confront the fundamental question at the heart of the situation: was profit worth the potential human cost? Were financial optimizations worth the betrayal of founding principles? Bradley recognized his position had become untenable. If the board determines that a full restoration to original specifications is necessary, my team will, of course, implement those changes. However, I maintain that the current modifications represent reasonable compromises that meet all legal requirements. Your team won't be implementing anything, Bradley. Victoria's tone left no room for misinterpretation. Your employment with Harrington Enterprises is terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect personal items from your office. The statement landed with seismic impact, board members exchanging startled glances. Bradley Wilson represented old guard corporate connections, relationships with investors and partners cultivated over decades. His dismissal would ripple through markets and boardrooms across the industry. Bradley's facade finally shattered completely, raw fury replacing corporate calculation. You're sacrificing shareholder value on the altar of sentimentality. This company succeeded because I made the hard decisions you couldn't implement, the efficiencies you were too squeamish to consider. Without me, Harrington will become an also-ran, unable to compete in markets that demand optimization over idealism. Victoria remained unmoved. Perhaps, but it will be a company I can lead with integrity, one worthy of the name it bears. She turned to the board members. I recognize this decision may not align with short-term financial priorities. If the board wishes to discuss my leadership in light of today's events, I'm prepared for that conversation. The implied challenge, choose between her principles or finding a new CEO, created momentary silence. Board members calculating complex equations of reputation, market perception, and governance responsibilities. The silver-haired board member finally spoke for the group. Victoria, while the financial impact concerns us, the potential liability and reputational damage from continuing with compromised construction would be far greater. The board supports your decision regarding both the Lakefront Tower project and Mr. Wilson's termination. As Bradley was escorted from the room, his parting glare at Ethan contained a promise of future reckoning, a battle postponed rather than concluded. In the aftermath, as board members and executives filtered out, Ethan remained seated, processing the magnitude of the day's events. His actions had triggered a corporate earthquake, exposing fraud, ending careers, altering the trajectory of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. 6 months earlier, he'd been a construction worker, living paycheck to paycheck. Now he'd helped shape decisions affecting thousands of lives and livelihoods. Victoria approached. Once they were alone, fatigue finally visible beneath her professional composure. Thank you for seeing what I missed, for having the courage to pursue it despite the potential consequences. The simple acknowledgement carried weight beyond the words themselves. Recognition from someone who rarely admitted oversight or error, who held herself to impossible standards of perception and judgment. Ethan met her gaze directly. It's what you hired me to do. See what others miss, speak truth regardless of hierarchy or politics. Yes, a slight smile softened her expression. Though I admit I didn't anticipate quite this level of corporate upheaval when I created your position. Through the boardroom windows, Chicago spread before them, the skyline they'd both helped shape in different ways. She through vision and capital, he through direct labor. Somewhere in that urban landscape, Lily was finishing her school day, her future more secure than Ethan could have imagined 6 months earlier. Over these months, Lily had blossomed in ways that sometimes took Ethan's breath away. Her asthma attacks had decreased significantly under proper medical care, her natural intelligence finding challenge and recognition at Canterbury. The blue bedroom overlooking the lake had become her sanctuary, filled with science projects and books. Victoria had become a regular presence in their lives, her dinner visits evolving from professional check-ins to genuine connections. Her mentorship of Lily had revealed dimensions of Victoria that few ever glimpsed: warmth, humor, and ability to explain complex scientific concepts with patience and clarity. Victoria followed his gaze toward the horizon. Bradley's accusations will persist in whispers even after he's gone. Insinuations about why I trust your judgment, why I've taken personal interest in your transition to executive leadership. The unspoken concern hung between them that their professional relationship had become complicated by personal elements neither had fully acknowledged. Ethan considered his response carefully. People will always talk. What matters is that we know the truth. And what is the truth? Ethan, Victoria's question carried layers of meaning, an invitation to define what had evolved between them over these months of transformation. His phone vibrated with a message from Canterbury Academy. Lily had won first place in the science competition with her project on respiratory system adaptations. The triumph would normally have filled him with unalloyed joy, but Victoria's question lingered, demanding an answer he wasn't certain how to provide. The truth was complex, evolving, neither purely professional nor simply personal. They had become important to each other in ways that defied conventional categorization. Colleagues, certainly, but also something more. Friends, perhaps, though that word seemed insufficient for the connection that had developed. Two people united initially by circumstance, then by shared purpose, and increasingly by mutual respect and genuine affection. The truth is that you gave me and Lily a second chance when we needed it most. Ethan's response acknowledged the debt without diminishing the relationship. And today I hope I've repaid some small portion of that by helping protect what you've built. Victoria's expression suggested she recognized both what he'd said and what remained unspoken. James would have liked you, your clarity, your unwillingness to compromise on matters of safety and integrity. He believed construction wasn't just about buildings, but about creating safe spaces for human lives to unfold. The mention of her late husband, rare in professional settings, indicated a trust beyond corporate parameters. Victoria seldom spoke of James except in context of company history or technical innovations. Personal reminiscences remained closely guarded, shared only in moments of genuine connection. I would have liked to meet him. Ethan's simple acknowledgement recognized the significance of her sharing this aspect of herself. Victoria glanced at her watch, professional responsibilities reasserting themselves. I have damage control meetings for the next several hours. Will you and Lily still be available for dinner Thursday? I've been looking forward to seeing her science project. The question normalized what had become their regular pattern, maintaining connection despite the day's corporate drama and unveiled tensions. Whatever was developing between them would continue evolving at its own pace, neither rushed nor denied. Ethan nodded, certainty replacing the earlier uncertainty. We'll be there. Lily's already planning to demonstrate her experiment for you. As Victoria departed for her meetings, Ethan remained at the window watching the city transition from afternoon to evening. 6 months ago, he'd stood on steel beams far above these streets, a man at the end of his financial rope, desperate for any solution that would keep his daughter safe and housed. Now he stood in the pinnacle of corporate power, having helped redirect the course of an enterprise worth billions, his daughter thriving in an environment of security and opportunity he could never have provided alone. The journey from there to here seemed impossible, yet he had lived every step of it. The path ahead remained uncertain. Bradley's allies would regroup. Corporate politics would continue evolving. His position would face further challenges. But for this moment, watching the city lights emerge against the darkening sky, Ethan allowed himself to feel not just gratitude for the second chance, but pride in having proven worthy of it. Some things were worth fighting for, worth risking everything to protect. Lily's future, the integrity of structures where people live their lives. Truth in a world that often preferred comfortable deception. A construction worker's values, it turned out, translated remarkably well to corporate heights. Perhaps that had been Victoria's insight all along.